Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Chilling, right? Gives me shivers every time I hear it.
Yeah, it's like Orwell could see the future or something. That quote from 1984. It's about as relevant today as it was back then.
Absolutely. It's incredible, really. I mean, a book published way back in 1949 still feels so timely. Guess that's the mark of a true masterpiece, huh?
Definitely. 1984, that whole Big Brother thing, it gets right at the heart of our relationship with power.
Right. It makes you think about how easily things could go wrong, how a society built on control and surveillance could become our reality. And that's what we're diving into today, really getting under the skin of Orwell's brand of totalitarianism.
It's a dark world he creates, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But to understand the book, you've got to understand the man who wrote it.
George Orwell.
Yeah.
Didn't he have a pretty intense life?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine fighting in the Spanish Civil War, seeing the rise of fascism firsthand. That stuff stays with you.
Yeah, no kidding. So how did those experiences shape 1984?
It's all there in the book, the fear of unchecked power, the anxieties about the future. 1984 wasn't just some fictional story for Orwell. It was a warning.
A warning born from his own experiences?
Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
And it wasn't just personal experience that fueled his writing. Another book, The Managerial Revolution by James Burnham, had a big influence on Orwell's thinking for 1984.
The Managerial Revolution. What's that one about?
Burnham argued that the future wasn't going to be capitalism versus communism like everyone thought back then. He had this idea that a new form of totalitarian rule would emerge, run by a powerful class of managers.
So instead of workers taking control, it's the managers who end up calling the shots.
Exactly. They're the ones who control the systems, the technology. And if you think about it, that idea is mirrored in 1984, the inner party. They're like those managers, driven by power.
And they created a whole system to maintain that power, right? Didn't Orwell describe a pretty rigid social structure in Oceania?
It's like a pyramid, really.
Yeah.
At the top, you have the inner party, a tiny sliver of the population, maybe 2%. They're the ones calling all the shots, controlling every aspect of life in Oceania.
And everyone else is below them.
You got it. Yeah, below the inner party, you've got the outer party.
The outer party, that's where Winston fits in, right?
Exactly. He's a perfect example. The outer party, they're the ones who actually keep the party machine running, the bureaucrats, the functionaries.
But they're not exactly living the good life, are
No,
they?
not at all. They're under constant surveillance, never know who they can trust.
Always afraid of making one wrong move, saying the wrong thing, even thinking the wrong thought.
Exactly. One wrong step and they vanish, just like that.
And then at the very bottom, you have the proles.
The proles, yeah, they make up the vast majority of the population.
But the party doesn't seem too concerned about them, do they?
Well, they keep them in check. The proles are distracted. Their basic needs are barely met.
Work, eat, sleep, repeat kind of thing.
Something like that. They're given just enough to keep them from rebelling.
So basically, a system designed to crush any hint of rebellion before it even begins.
You could say that. And to do that, they've got some pretty terrifying methods of control.
Like the telescreens.
Exactly. Those things are everywhere.
Always watching, always listening. Can you imagine having one of those in your living room?
It's the ultimate invasion of privacy. No wonder people are afraid to even think a dissenting thought.
I mean, they could be reported for thought crime, just for thinking the wrong thing.
And it makes you wonder, right? What happens when technology that's supposed to connect us is used for oppression instead?
It's a scary thought. But the party's control goes even further than surveillance, doesn't it?
That's right. They don't just control what people do, they control what people think.
Which brings us to Newspeak.
Ah, Newspeak. The party's attempt to engineer language itself.
Simplifying it, shrinking the vocabulary, all in the name of controlling thought.
Exactly. They want to eliminate words associated with rebellion, with freedom, with individuality. Because if you can't even articulate those concepts...
You can't rebel against their absence.
Wow.
It's almost too chilling to think about.
And that brings us to one of the most disturbing concepts in the whole book. Doublethink.
Doublethink. Talk about a mind game.
It really is. It's the ability to believe something even though you know it's a lie.
Accepting two contradictory beliefs at the same time.
And it's not presented as insanity. It's a survival mechanism in Oceania.
Which is what makes it so terrifying. And Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth, that's a perfect example of doublethink in action.
Absolutely. He's literally rewriting history to fit the party's agenda. The past is whatever the party says it is.
Talk about controlling the narrative.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how often that happens in our own world, doesn't it? How easily truth can be manipulated, especially in this age of information overload.
It's a sobering thought, for sure. But even in this oppressive environment that Orwell creates, there are glimpses of hope, moments of rebellion against the party.
Right. There's still that human desire for something more.
Like Winston's affair with Julia.
Yes. Their relationship becomes this act of defiance against the party's control.
It represents everything the party tries to stamp out: love, desire, individuality.
And don't forget about that room they rent above Mr. Charrington's shop. That becomes their sanctuary.
Their little slice of freedom in a world without it. It's like their own personal golden country.
Right. That idea of the golden country that Winston keeps coming back to.
A world of beauty and freedom, a stark contrast to the grim reality of Oceania. But as we know, those moments of reprieve are short-lived.
Because Winston and Julia's rebellion is discovered, and they're caught by the thought police.
And from there, things take a very dark turn, leading us to the Ministry of Love. The Ministry of Love. Even the name sends chills down my spine. It's like Orwell was trying to highlight the perversion of language, how easily words can be twisted.
Exactly. Because there's no love in the Ministry of Love, is there? Just pure, calculated brutality.
And what's really terrifying is that it's not just about physical torture. It's about psychological manipulation, breaking someone's spirit, making them doubt their own sanity.
And that's where Room 101 comes in. Just the thought of it. It's every human's worst nightmare.
Room 101, where they confront you with your deepest fear, whatever it takes to make you break.
It's the ultimate symbol of the party's power. The idea that they can control not just your actions, but your thoughts, your very being. And at the heart of it all is O'Brien. He's the one who oversees Winston's torture, but he's not just some sadistic guard, is he?
No, O'Brien is different. He's more complex. He almost seems to believe in what he's doing.
That's what makes him so frightening. He's a true believer in the party, in its ideology. He sees himself as a teacher, guiding Winston towards some twisted form of enlightenment.
And that enlightenment requires Winston to betray everything he holds dear, to love Big Brother.
Remember that line, "We are not content with negative obedience. When finally you surrender to us, it must be of your own free will." That's the party's ultimate goal. Not just obedience, but total and absolute control over the mind.
And in the end, that's exactly what happens to Winston, isn't it?
Yeah.
He breaks, he betrays Julia, renounces his own thoughts, and embraces the party's version of reality.
It's a heartbreaking ending, a chilling reminder of the fragility of the human spirit, of how easily we can be manipulated, especially in the face of overwhelming power.
1984 is a powerful book, and one that leaves us with a lot to think about.
Definitely. It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Could something like this happen in our own world?
It's a question we all need to ask ourselves. And as we navigate this increasingly complex world with its ever-evolving technologies and ideologies, Orwell's warnings about the dangers of unchecked power, surveillance, and the manipulation of truth feel as relevant as ever.
So if you haven't read 1984, I highly recommend giving it a go.
Because understanding the past might just be the key to protecting our future. Thanks for diving deep with us today.